The history and destruction of the Bamiyan Buddha statues. Have you ever wondered how a huge statue carved into a cliff could tell the story of a forgotten era? This is what the Bamiyan Buddhas, once giant in the Bamiyan Valley of Afghanistan, symbolize. Hello and welcome to Eccentric History. In this video, we aim to uncover the story of the Bamiyan Buddhas and their demise. As we journey through this history, we realize that these more than life-size figures are not merely remains of stone but cultural symbols that once embodied the collective memory and identity of a civilization. The majestic monoliths, description of the Bamiyan Buddhas. Standing tall within the rough lands of Bamiyan Valley in Afghanistan were two large Buddha statues. These silent observers of history were found about 230 kilometers northwest of Kabul in an area full of historical meaning. This spot was a crucial part of the Silk Road, acting as a meeting point between East and West for hundreds of years. The Bamiyan Buddhas were immense and captivating, towering above the Bamiyan Valley. The taller western statue stood about 55 meters high, approximately the height of a 15-story building, while the smaller eastern figure measured around 38 meters. Carved from the sandstone cliffs, their features were painstakingly detailed. The face were crafted with exquisite care and expression, offering a unique sense of tranquility. The draperies covering the statue had been sculpted with a precision that suggested flowing fabric. The remnants of paint and plaster on their surfaces hinted at a time when these statues were adorned in vibrant colors, bringing an additional element of awe-inspiring majesty to these spectacular monoliths. The historical journey, creation, and cultural significance. Bearing in mind the monumental nature of the Bamiyan Buddhas, it's evident that their creation was an extraordinary achievement. Historical records suggest that they were carved directly into the cliffside around the 6th century, during the flourishing Gandhara period, demonstrating the advanced capabilities of artisans of that era. These huge statues, aside from their sheer physical enormity, held great cultural and religious implications. Buddhism, prevalent in the region during their creation, regards the Buddha as a symbol of enlightenment and serenity. Thus, these statues were not just mere figures carved into stone, but embodiments of the sacred teachings of Buddhism, serving as a place of worship, pilgrimage, and meditation for many. In a broader sense, the Buddhas of Bamiyan signified the connection between East and West given the location of the Bamiyan on the Silk Road. The Silk Road was a network of trade routes that connected the East with the West, and it was not just goods that were exchanged but also ideas, including religious beliefs and artistic influences. This mix is evident in the style of the Buddhas, which incorporated Greek influence, Gandharan artistic elements with the distinct serenity of Asian Buddhist iconography. These statues significantly impacted the development of art and architecture in Central Asia and even further afield. The technique of carving gigantic figures into cliff sides directly influenced similar endeavors in China, such as the renowned Longmen grottos. The drapery styles and the serene appearance of the statues found echoes in numerous subsequent depictions of the Buddha across Asia. Thus, the importance of the Bamiyan Buddhas was not confined to their physical locale, but spread far beyond. The cultural crossroads, Bamiyan through the ages. As established previously, the Bamiyan Buddhas were much more than just colossal statues. They symbolized Bamiyan's historical position as a crossroads of cultures, situated along the Silk Road. Bamiyan was an essential trade hub from the 1st to the 7th century CE, linking China with the Middle East and Europe. As a result, it saw a blend of diverse cultures, ideas, and religious beliefs, which is reflected in the creation and aesthetics of the Buddhas themselves. The influence of various empires on Bamiyan and its Buddhas were significant. Early on, it was under the control of the Kushan Empire, which was notably tolerant of different religions. It was during this period, with its syncretic mix of Greek, Indian and other Central Asian influences, that Buddhism flourished, leading to the creation of the Buddhas. However, the situation started changing around the 7th century with the arrival of Islam, beginning with the Umayyad and then the Abbasid Caliphate. Though the change wasn't immediate, over time Buddhism declined and Islam took hold, reflecting the shifts in power and religious influence in the region. Remarkably, despite the decline of Buddhism and the ascendance of Islam, the Buddhas were left untouched, a testament to the tolerance of these early Islamic states. This relative peace was disrupted with the invasion of Genghis Khan in the 13th century, leaving the Bamiyan in ruins. Despite the destruction, the Buddhas survived, albeit with some damage. Later, in the 16th century, the region came under the control of Safavid dynasties, and subsequently the Durrani Empire, but the Buddhas still standing remained relatively unscathed. However, it wasn't until the 20th century that the Buddhas faced their most significant threat. After years of relative peace, the area became a conflict zone, with the Soviet invasion in 1979 and later under the control of the Taliban in the late 1990s. The Taliban's strict interpretation of Islam saw a drastic shift in the treatment of pre-Islamic relics, culminating in the tragic destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas in 2001. The Cataclysm, the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas. Following the timeline we've established, we approached a grim chapter in the history of the Bamiyan Buddhas, their destruction. This tragedy coincides with the rise of the Taliban, a hardline Islamist group that emerged amid the chaos of the Afghan civil war in the 1990s. The Taliban's ascension to power introduced an extremely strict and literal interpretation of Islamic law, under which representations of the human form, especially those considered idols of non-Islamic faith, were deemed to be blasphemous. In February 2001, the Taliban issued a decree ordering the destruction of all statues in Afghanistan, including the Bamiyan Buddhas, as they were seen as symbols of idolatry. The decree drew immediate international outrage and condemnation. Various organizations, including UNESCO and several other nations, urged the Taliban to reconsider, arguing the incalculable cultural and historical significance of these statues. However, the pleas fell on deaf ears. On March 2, 2001, the destruction began. Initially, the Taliban attempted to demolish the statues using artillery fire. However, the robust structure of the larger Buddha, constructed centuries ago, surprisingly held firm. Impervious to these initial attacks, this unexpected resilience compelled the Taliban to devise a more extreme plan. The Taliban, determined to eliminate these ancient symbols, resorted to a method of destruction that was both more methodical and more brutal. They bore numerous holes into the body of the Buddhas, drilling deep into the very heart of these magnificent statues. The purpose of these holes was as simple as it was horrifying. They served as vessels for explosives. Once the holes had been drilled into the structure, explosives were carefully inserted. This painstaking process required the slow and systematic placement of the explosive charges within each drill hole, a method designed to ensure the complete destruction of the statues. The explosion of these charges was not carried out in one fell swoop. Instead, the destruction was performed in stages, each round of explosions further damaging the statues and weakening their structure. This grueling and heart-wrenching process stretched over several weeks, a slow annihilation that extended the period of devastation. The methodical and relentlessness sequence of drilling, filling and blasting had achieved its horrifying goal. The once grand Buddhas of Bamiyan, symbols of peace, serenity and human ingenuity, had been reduced to nothing more than a pile of rubble. This gruesome process took almost an entire month to complete, a proof of the drastic lengths the Taliban were willing to go to erase the cultural landmarks from existence. By the end of March, both Buddhas were reduced to rubble. The largest Buddha, Salsal, once towering at 55 meters, and its companion, the 38-meter tall Shamama, were no more. The international community was shocked. Images of the empty cliff face, once home to these grand monuments, were broadcast worldwide, resulting in a wave of global grief. The world reacts, global response and efforts for restoration. The world reacted with shock and grief. As the Bamiyan Buddhas were destroyed completely, the international community condemned the act, with many viewing it as an attack on the shared cultural heritage of humanity. Multiple countries voiced their strong disapproval, marking it as a dark day in the annals of world history. UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, termed it an intolerable crime against culture. Their response was immediate, launching appeals to stop the destruction and subsequently condemning the act when the appeals were rejected. As the custodians of World Heritage Sites, they were at the forefront of the backlash against the Taliban's catastrophic decision. In the aftermath of the destruction, various international bodies, including UNESCO, joined by numerous countries and private organizations, stepped up to aid in the preservation of what remained and to plan for potential restoration. Despite the significant challenges, preliminary steps were taken to stabilize the site, collect and catalogue the fallen fragments for future reference. The German wing of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, ICOMOS, for example, undertook the daunting task of digitally scanning the site and the remnants to create a 3D model of the statues. This virtual reconstruction had been vital for the planning of possible physical restoration. A UNESCO-led initiative in 2019 decided to establish a Bamiyan Cultural Center, intending to promote cultural exchange and understanding. This development, along with ongoing conversations about the future of the site, offers a glimmer of hope that the legacy of the Bamiyan Buddhas may yet endure. As we stare into the empty niches, the question lingers: how can we safeguard our world's irreplaceable cultural heritage from the whims of destruction? And even more importantly, can we ever truly reconstruct and replace what has been lost in the rubble of senseless destruction?